Hello everyone. I was asked recently if I could make a quick tutorial on how to set up an online exam using the Respondus Monitor Lockdown browser. And so what I'm going to do today is spend a few minutes talking about these three different categories. The first is how to set up a Respondus Monitor Lockdown browser. And then I want to go through what it looks like when you grade and review an exam using this system. And then finally, I have been using this system for several years now. And during that time, I have developed a list of suggestions and tips for both faculty who are teaching these courses and then the students who are taking exams in this format. So let me go ahead and get started. The first thing that you'll want to do is just go to your Blackboard shell and then click on the course that you want to add a test to. I'm going to pick this course here. It's a course that I already have some exams established in, and so that'll make it a little easier. However, if you don't have your exam made yet, you're going to make it the same way you would make any Blackboard quiz or test or homework assignment that you've done in the past. If you're unfamiliar with how to do this, let me know and I'll be happy to show you how to do this. If you are trying to upload a pre-existing exam that you have in a Word document and you don't want to add each question individually, I can help show you how to add them in a little quicker manner. But this video, I want to focus on setting up the lockdown browser. Okay, so I'm just going to pick any one of these tabs here. It doesn't really matter which one because I'm just going to add a test to any of them. But I'll pick this one here. And so once you're in this field here, what you want to do is hover over assessments and then click on tests. Now at this point you would have already made your test, and so now it's just the process of uploading it like you probably have done before. So far nothing's different. And for this one I'm just going to upload this midterm. And this is a familiar screen that many of you have seen before. You'd want to make sure you click it available for students if you're ready for it to be available for students. You can click multiple attempts if you want them to have multiple attempts, but if it's an exam you probably don't want to click that, but that's up to you, I guess. Okay, now we get to this forced completion decision. If you click on it, once the student opens it up, they have to complete it, which is what I want. In my classes, students will begin the test and I want them to complete it at that one sitting. This is where a problem arose and why I don't click this anymore, but it's up to you. You have to remember when students are taking a test using the Respondus Monitor Lockdown browser that there will be an occasional technical problem. And so if for some reason there's an electrical surge or they get kicked out of their exam for any reason at all, they can't get back into it. And the only way they can get back into it is if you reset the test. And if you reset the test, that gives them an unfair advantage because they've now already seen the questions. And one could imagine a scenario where somebody would take advantage of that situation where they would open it up, take a look at the questions, and then close it and then tell the instructor that they got kicked out. So I don't click this anymore. This does mean that they could open it up and close it multiple times. But with the monitor aspect of Lockdown Browser, you will be able to see every time they do that, and you can tell them they're not allowed to do that. And if they do that, they're going to get points deducted or get a 0 depending on how you want to handle that situation. One other thing I'd like you to know about the forced completion, not having it clicked, is that if you set the timer at 60 minutes, that if they were to log out, that the timer keeps going. So if somebody works on something for 30 minutes, they log out and come back to it 30 minutes later, their time is up. Now ultimately, I don't want them to leave the test, and so I tell them if they leave the test, that's considered cheating and they get a 0. So I don't ever have a problem with this. All right, now let's move on to the rest of the settings here. Display after, display until. This is up to you how you want to set up the parameters of your exams. I often will give students a span of 2 days to take the test, but you can do that however you want. You can set it up for the exact parameters of your class time, whatever is your preference. Don't click a password. You'll see in a moment that the system automatically generates a password for you, but don't add anything here. If you wanted to add a user or group because you wanted them to have extra time to take a test, so this is really helpful with students who need extra time. I'm going to pick on this student here because she did give me permission to use her name in these examples. The rest of these names I have blacked out so you can't see them. Once you have her name here, it gives you a lot of flexibility in that, let's say for instance, this student had a note from Students with Disability Services that they got twice the amount of time. Now this doesn't apply to this particular student, but if she were to allow to have extra time, you can give her the extra time of 120 minutes since I have it set for 60 minutes. You can change it to whatever you want. I can also change the availability. So if you have a student that is gone for a weekend because of a conference they're going to, or because they are a student athlete and they have a competition that particular day, you can change their availability rather easily to a different time. So you don't have to set up a different time for them to come to your office and take the test. They could also take the test while they're in the hotel room while they're traveling. So it does offer that flexibility as well. Due dates, this is fine. Put that however you want to do your due dates. Down here, I'm always nervous about students being able to access the exam after. And to be honest with you, sometimes I don't understand what will happen if I click on all of these. So to help me sleep better at night, I always do this. I put select on specific date where they can view things, and then I make it like 8 years in the future, and then just select any random day. 8 years in the future, this course won't even be available to them, so it's not even an issue, but I still go ahead and click everything off. This way I'm doubly sure that nothing's going to pop up to them and reveal the questions or answers for them. Down here, you can choose. I usually just keep this all at once. Now, I will often click this randomize questions, and this helps keep everybody a little bit more honest when they're taking the test, because no one student will have the exact same question. And in fact, I often, when I set up the exam, I will set it up in pools, so not every student will get the exact same questions regardless, but this way they don't get them in the same order. All right, I think I have everything set here I want. And up to this point, this is just like any other test. So most of this might have been review for you. So here it is down here. Usually I will keep this unavailable until I'm ready for students to take it, because I don't want them to open it up yet because I haven't set up the Respondus part of it. So to set up the Respondus part of it, you'll go here under Course Tools, and there's this link to click, Respondus Lockdown Browser. It will list all the tests that you have deployed. These here, you can see I already have the Lockdown Browser established for these tests or quizzes because students have already taken them and they've already been released. This is the one we just added, the midterm. And so now I'm going to go to Settings. And there are a few options here. Don't require Respondus Lockdown Browser for this exam. We don't want to put that because otherwise why would we have gone this far? So you click on this one, require Respondus Lockdown Browser. So all this means is that when they're taking the test, they can't access another website. It locks down their ability to do that, which is useful, but we're going to go a little further here in just a moment. Again, don't put the password here. It's not necessary. I click on Advanced Settings. It's up to you what you want to make available. So if you're not sure which one to click, you can always hover over the Explain, and it will tell you what that option does and if they recommend doing that. I don't lock students in, because if they have to leave the exam for an emergency or because of an internet problem or anything, you want them to have the ability, I think you want them to have the ability to do that. And when they do that, they have to enter a reason for doing that. Allow students to take the exam with an iPad. I've never done that because I always use the monitoring system here with the camera, and I don't think that works very well with that. Allow access to specific external web domains. You may have a situation where you want them to access a web domain. I've never done that because I've never allowed them to do that. Now, I usually will enable the calculator, and I'll usually enable the scientific calculator, even though for the most part they'd be fine with just the standard calculator, but in case they need that, I will put it there. Even if the calculations are deemed fairly simple, I still enable this for them. I've never hit enable printing from the toolbar. I think if you want to keep your exam secure at all, you don't want this because you don't want them printing the exam. All right. Now down here is the next setting we're going to do, and we're going to click on the Require Respondus Monitor for this exam. So what this does, this will enable their camera to video them while they're taking the exam. It gives a little version of what it does. Now down here you have a few other options. Let me walk you through these. Webcam check. This is not an option that has to be there. They're going to check to make sure the webcam is working. Under additional instructions, I always edit this. Blackboard gives you this generic disclaimer here, which is good, but over the many semesters I've been doing this, I've learned that there are some very specific rules I want my students to follow. And I've already copied them, and so I'm just going to paste them here. I can provide a document showing these rules here. Now, some of these rules are straightforward, and some of them are the result of finding somebody doing something suspicious. And so a rule had to be made to reduce that suspicion. And I'll go over some of these towards the end of the video here, and I can also email you a copy of this document so you can see what I ask students to do. All right, so I'm going to save and close that. Guidelines and tips, I usually keep that on there. It provides students with some guidelines about the best way to take one of these exams. It doesn't hurt to have that on there, so I usually leave that available for the students. Show ID, this is up to you if you show this or not. I usually don't, but interestingly enough, students will usually show it anyhow because they're so used to these exams that they usually are just have accustomed to show their ID. So it's up to you if you want to show that. I often tell them if they show an ID, don't show me your driver's license because I don't need to know their driver's license number. But that's up to you. Environmental check, I will usually add something to this as well. Usually what's listed here is fine, but I will add a statement to this that will strongly urge the students to make sure they do a very thorough scan of their area. Because a thorough scan of their area that they're working from will reduce most suspicions that could arise. If they do a very lame kind of scan, then that always raises a little bit more suspicion. And it's up to you if you want to enforce any kind of point deductions or anything like that if they don't do a thorough environmental check. In my experience, they usually do a pretty good job of that. And you can't take off the facial detection. This is so they can detect the face, as one might imagine from what it's called. There's some options with this. I usually keep this first one clicked, prevent students from starting the exam if the face cannot be detected. I usually don't click this one, notify students during the exam if face cannot be detected. In the past, when I've selected that, any gentle movement of their head kind of will set off the alarm on it, and it stops them, and it's a distraction, and I don't want them to be further distracted while taking the exam. And so I haven't seen a real use for this, but that's up to you. Advanced settings, and I've never selected any of these options, but you may have an application where that's useful. All right, so once I am happy with everything here, I hit save and close, and now it's all set for the Respondus Monitor part of the exam. And so now I'll go back over here to where the exam is, and this is what I added, and now it has added this clause to the end of it, and so now I know it's ready. And so now I can go in here and I can say make it available. Now I want to click on edit the test options. We're not going to edit anything on here. I just want to show you something here. You can see that it's automatically generated this password. I'm not sure why it does this. I just know it does it. You don't need to tell students that password. They won't ever need to enter it. In fact, if you give them this password, I think they can bypass the Lockdown Browser Monitor portion of the exam. So definitely do not give them that password. All right, now the test is ready for students to take. Now, before students take the test, I email them instructions on how to download the Lockdown Browser because they can't take the test unless they've downloaded the Lockdown Browser to their computer. Alternatively, if they take the exam from a Mac computer in the library, I think it's only the Macs that it'll work on, then they don't need to download it to their computer. So they can use a Mac at the library. I don't think it's on the PCs because I don't think the PCs have a camera. That might have changed since I last checked. But at any rate, these are the instructions to download the Lockdown Browser. It's fairly straightforward, and often students already have this because they've taken an online class or another class that they've been required to use this browser. I will also give them a sample test for them to try this out to make sure that they have no problems using the Lockdown Browser on the day of the actual exam. And usually what that sample test will be a short quiz over the rules. So again, these are the rules that I have for them, and I email these to them so they know what they are, so they know what they're being held accountable for. In my face-to-face classes, I make students sign something saying that they will follow these rules. And so I just make the sample quiz over these questions here. If you want to, you can give students a bonus point to encourage them to do it so that they're confident that this will work well for them when they take the exam. But that's up to you and how you feel about bonus points. Okay, now we've set up the exam and the students are able to take it. And then while they're taking it, the multiple choice questions that you have entered, or the matching questions or the true-false questions, those kinds of questions will automatically be graded for you. The short answer questions you'll have to grade, but you can start grading them while the students are still taking the test if you want to. What I'd like to do now is show you what you as the instructor sees after the student is done. So what we'll do here is we'll go back to the Respondus Lockdown browser. All right, so now under normal circumstances, since we just set up the midterm and presumably that's the test students would have taken, that's where we'd go. But there's nothing in that one because that was just a fake test as an example. But students in my Biology 315 class recently took this test here. And so I'm going to go here and look at class results. Now, let's look at the students taking this test. You can see most of the students I have blacked out because I don't have their permission to show their names, but I did talk to Ingrid and she did give me permission to talk about her submission. Now, one question that often comes up is, how can I watch everyone's video to make sure that they're doing everything properly while they're taking the exam? And the short answer is you can't do that. You don't have time to watch everyone's. But there are some tools available that you can use to allow you to screen, say, up to 100 different students in a relatively short period of time. So let's look at everything that's available to us just from here. We can see how long they took to take the test. You can see the score they got. This was the number of points they got correct. It's not the percent correct. Otherwise, all these students would have done really bad on this test, but they actually all did pretty well. You can see when they submitted it. You can see all this good stuff here, and that's useful. But the most useful thing here is this review priority. And so this is the first line that we can take to make sure we're looking at the videos that have the highest degree of suspicion. Now, what you'll discover as you're using this is that the system is incredibly sensitive. It will pick up things that turn out to not be a real problem. And that's what we're going to find is the case for Ingrid. I've had her in 3 different classes. She didn't do anything wrong here. The system just picked up something that it didn't need to pick up. And I'll show you that in a moment. So the first thing we do is we're going to look at the ones up here. So in this particular case, I would look at probably the first, all the way up to this one, maybe this one here, just to kind of give it a little closer look, and certainly the first 4 here, give it the most scrutiny. Now, I don't necessarily think it's important to watch the whole video, though there have been times when I've been concerned and I've watched most of a video. Now, what we can see in the case for Ingrid here is that on this timeline here, it will tell me the parts that it looks like she was doing something wrong. Okay. Over here, it provides an opportunity to just go straight to that point and see what the problem is. So here you can see all of the claims of suspicion here are that she was missing from the frame. Well, you can go to each of these. We don't need to, but you could. But let's just pick this one at 16 minutes. And at 16 minutes, it's this whole big chunk here. If we want, we can skim it here. And you can see she doesn't leave the room. I think probably what's happening here is the fan up here is somehow or another picking up a background and is indicating she's not there. I've never seen this before, but that's my guess. No idea though. But clearly she's not missing from the frame. She's not doing anything wrong. This is just wrong. And so I don't have any suspicion. Now, even if this wasn't indicated as high and it was just a low level, I still check everyone's images here. And so what this does is every minute or two, and it's somewhat random, so 140 to 230, 230 to 320. The students don't know when it's taking the snapshot. And so what you can do is you can skim this real quick and just see if by some chance you catch them with a book open, or if you see them taking a picture of the screen, or if you see them doing anything else that violates one of the rules. Now, it is true that a student could do something wrong between 13 minutes and 14 minutes here, but the student would never know that this is the time frame that they could do something wrong. So this is a pretty good deterrent. Now, the other thing I do, and I try to do this with all the students, but if you have, say, 200 students in your class, you may not be able to do this with everyone. But you could take a random sampling, I suspect. But I try to look at them all. And this is the environmental check. This is when, in the beginning of the test, they'll scan the room and to make sure that they don't have any notes hidden or anything like that. So as I play this, what you'll see, she scans the room. She shows her whiteboard here. They're allowed to use a whiteboard in this test. You can see she doesn't have anything like on the wall. Now, could she have something posted hidden somewhere? Probably. Okay, and let me back up here real quick, because in my class, like I said before, they're allowed to use a whiteboard. And so I make them show me the whiteboard before to make sure there's no notes on it. And at the end of the exam, they have to show me the whiteboard again, and it has to be erased. So they can't walk out of the room with things on that whiteboard that they could give to somebody else. I don't let them use paper because paper is one of those things where they could write something down and it's not gone forever. So I think this is a little bit better of an option for them. And most students have a whiteboard, or they can go to a room where they have a whiteboard, or I have several in my office I loan out throughout the semester. And then it won't move on to a test, but like I said, I very rarely watch more than a minute of any exam, only if there is a reason to be suspicious that they're doing something wrong. Maybe there's something in the environmental check that I saw that concerns me, or maybe I see a student constantly looking to the left or to the right corner, and that makes me think maybe they have something hidden there. Usually that turns out just to not be the case, but sometimes you see something like that. Now, as far as grading them goes, that has nothing to do with this browser. You're going to grade them the same way you would grade any Blackboard quiz or test. And one of the advantages to this is everything's on the computer, and you can grade it at home without logging a bunch of tests with you. The short answer questions are really nice because I can actually read everybody's handwriting, so that's another bonus to it. So that ends this second part here. You can see that it can be pretty quick to screen through a whole bunch of students in a relatively short period of time. Now, as far as tips and suggestions, over the past several semesters, I've learned things about better ways to take these tests from the students' perspectives. I've also caught a few students trying to cheat the system, so I've added new rules. I have a list of rules that the students have to follow, as I showed you earlier, and I'm happy to provide that list to you. I was going to read them off to you, but you probably don't need me to read a list of rules to you. You can read them just the same. But some of the big ones are that they're not allowed to copy the exam while they're taking it. They're not allowed to take the test with others. Nobody else can be in the room when they're taking it. That with the exception of the computer they're taking the test with, they can't have any other electronics on their table. And there's many other rules and suggestions that I'm happy to share with you. If you are interested in using the Respondus Monitor Lockdown browser for administering exams, I'm happy to chat with you about this and share any resources I may have. Good luck.